I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents. Dozens of Catholics massacred in an Iraqi cathedral in the deadliest attack on Christians since the start of the war. We'll have the latest. Plus, is there a Catholic vote? We'll find out. And a parade of saints at one Queen's parish.
Blessed Mother Teresa of Calcutta, pray for us.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Francesca Maxime has the night off. The war in Iraq may officially be over, but the bloodshed continues there just over 2 months after U.S. combat troops left the country. Some 50,000 troops are still in Iraq, providing support and training to the Iraqi military. But they were not the target of this weekend's attack in Baghdad. Militants had Christian worshipers in their crosshairs when they took an entire Catholic congregation hostage on Sunday. When all was said and done, it was the deadliest attack ever on Iraqi Christians. Dozens of people died, many more were hurt, and now for the first time we're hearing from the victims themselves. It was a gruesome scene in Baghdad over the weekend at Our Lady of Deliverance Catholic Church, and now survivors are speaking out.
It was worse than a horror film, she weeps. The attackers stormed in. There was gunfire and grenades. Shrapnel was flying from all sides. We scattered and threw ourselves to the ground. We didn't know what would happen to us.
Outside the church, this woman carried her elderly aunt's bloody purse. She told CNN her aunt was 80 years old and was shot in the face. She died alongside other relatives inside the church. After a 4-hour standoff, Iraqi troops raided the church. At least 2 of the attackers, wearing suicide vests, blew themselves up. In the end, 58 people died. At least 75 more were hurt. A group calling itself the Islamic State of Iraq later claimed responsibility for the attack. The umbrella group includes a number of Sunni extremist organizations and has ties to al-Qaeda in Iraq. Some of the first reaction to the massacre came from Pope Benedict. On Monday, the pontiff called the violence absurd and said he was praying for the victims. The Pope also said the bloodshed was, quote, all the more ferocious in that it hit defenseless people gathered in the house of the Lord, which is home to reconciliation and love, end quote. It all happened, ironically, just days after the Synod of Middle Eastern bishops wrapped up at the Vatican. Ahead of those meetings, church leaders expressed concern over the safety of Christians throughout the region and in Iraq in particular.
No country today authorizes the explicit state persecution of Catholics or Christians. Naturally, there are countries where the situation for Christians and Catholics is getting worse. For example, in Iraq, the secular elements of the state are less than in the preceding Iraq.
But Father Yeager says the future may be even bleaker for Christians there. He says there are signs the country may become an Islamic theocracy. So how does the church go about improving religious tensions in the Middle East? The Synod provided a forum to discuss different ideas, including the importance of Catholic educational institutions in the development of peace.
The schools are open to everyone, and they attempt to teach understanding and work toward peace. So my own conviction as a result of that, and as a result of having seen the schools, is that the more we can do to promote Christian education, not as a direct means of proselytizing, but as a means of moving hearts and spirits to work together for mutual understanding and for peace.
Freedom of religion is generally secured, but freedom of conscience is much less secure. For this reason, the Synod emphasized the importance of having respect for the freedom of others and to overcome religious interests in favor of greater justice and equality. The majority religion should allow religious freedom, especially that of conscience, for all minority religions, not just Christians.
But while Christian leaders were talking about peace at the Vatican, militants were planning attacks like the one in Baghdad on Sunday. Peace did not come soon enough for the victims, and for the survivors, true religious freedom seems like it is worlds away. And Pope Benedict sent a message to the Archbishop of Baghdad today. The pontiff said he is renewing his appeal that the sacrifice of those Christians who died can be the seeds of peace and a true rebirth. Well, stay with us. There's much more currents coming up. Americans head to the polls for the midterm elections, and control of Congress hangs in the balance. We'll have those stories plus the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, the Saints go marching in, and we were in that number. We'll take you there. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Well, Election Day is finally here, and there's a lot up for grabs. Voters were out bright and early this morning in New York, where the big ticket is the governor's race. Two Catholics, Democrat Andrew Cuomo and Republican Carl Palladino, campaigned right through the eve of the election. Palladino cast his vote this morning in his hometown of Buffalo, while Cuomo voted today in his hometown of Mount Kisco. Well, observers are watching closely around other races around the country, that is, with an eye on who ends up controlling Congress. Both the Senate and House could flip from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, with many incumbents facing tough opponents. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and California's Barbara Boxer were among those in tight races going into the campaign's final days. Well, the day before the election, Christian leaders from different denominations were pressing President Obama to do more to address hunger and poverty around the world. They met with the president yesterday at the White House. The head of Church World Service says that while Americans are struggling financially, families in the developing world are also struggling. Other topics discussed during that meeting were the relationship between poverty and education, conflicts in the Middle East, and the plight of Christians in the region. Well, the Middle East is not the only area where Christians are under attack. From Russia, an Orthodox church was burned to the ground. Two other churches were also attacked. It happened in a predominantly Muslim area early on Monday morning. A report says that in all three cases, the fires started when flammable objects were thrown through the church's windows. Well, meantime, some potentially dramatic news involving the Orthodox Church from Turkey, as we hear from Rome Reports.
It seems like just a run-down building, but for the Orthodox Church based in modern-day Istanbul, it's a milestone. According to an article in the Turkish newspaper Haberturk, the Turkish government will return this orphanage based in the Buyukada Island in the Marmara Sea to the Patriarchate of Constantinople. The groundbreaking event marks the first time in history the Republic of Turkey will return property belonging to a religious minority. The secular Turkish government banned religious organizations from owning property in a law passed in 1936, until now. According to the report, the move resulted in a hotly contested ruling by the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg. There are some 250 million Orthodox worldwide who recognize the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew I as their leader. However, there are only about 3,000 ethnic Greeks living in Turkey today. The Orthodox Church in Turkey has been subject to many restrictions over the past century. Turkish officials have yet to confirm the news, though experts say the move will open a can of worms of sorts, as there are about 20 other buildings of great value that have been seized by the government.
Well, finally, turning back to this country, the organization 40 Days for Life says 541 babies across the U.S. were saved from abortion during the group's fall campaign. The campaign included vigils outside abortion clinics, praying, fasting, and community outreach. The group's executive director also said that at least 4 employees at abortion facilities left their jobs during the campaign. Stay tuned. There's more currents coming up. Just ahead, what part might Catholics play in the election? Welcome back. Well, this election day, a former president is criticizing what he calls the excessive melding of religion and politics. On a book tour, former President Jimmy Carter was targeting the Southern Baptist Church, but also added that too many other religions, in his view, have also become actively affiliated with just one party, the Republicans. And Carter expressed concern that there's been what he calls a serious breakdown in the principle of the separation of church and state. Well, we wanted to take a closer look at that issue on Election Day and a lot more as well. So joining us to discuss all of this is John Heyer. He's the Executive Director of the Catholic Citizens Committee here in Brooklyn. John, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. And of course, just off the bat here, I want to get your reaction to what the former president had to say. Too much religion and politics mixing, maybe?
Well, if that's true, then we had too much religion and politics mixing when the United States was founded by the founding fathers. I mean, it was actually founded the country based on religious freedom, and to be able to people of faith be able to prosper, depending on however it was that they wanted to prosper in their faith. But, I think what the former president is getting to is maybe organized religion, let's say the Baptist, conference themselves, telling their parishioners, their congregants exactly who to vote for.
Right.
On that way, we as Catholics, we really don't have that issue because, unfortunately, more and more, the Catholics don't listen to the church when it comes to politics. And you see that 50% or over 50% of Catholics are registered Democrats. Yet time and time again, Catholic-affiliated organizations as well as leaders constantly endorse Republicans. Yes, we just saw recently an archbishop from the Vatican, just recently named cardinal, specifically said that every Catholic had the moral obligation to go out and look at who was running for office and base their decision on life, which in most cases, especially let's say in our New York area, really leaves us with one party, and that would be the Republican Party, or perhaps a conservative line.
Now, along those same lines, I do want to say, though, that a lot of times, I mean, you'll see Republican candidates who are very much pro-life and very much against abortion in most cases, if not all. But then you'll also have a lot of Republican candidates who are very pro-death penalty as well. So, how do you kind of resolve that in a lot of people's minds? I mean, how do they go about making a decision when that's the case?
Well, I mean, as far as what we're getting from our leadership of our church is that the abortion question is the first and the foremost question of prominence. However, it's a really good practical question, because don't forget, we as Catholics believe in a formed conscience. We all have our individual free will and our conscience, and it's up to us to make these decisions. And so I guess that might be why there is no one Catholic vote, because we do have our own decisions and our own conscience. And if you take a look at it, Democrats, are right on board with immigration. They're right on board with a lot of social service and welfare programs that we as a church believe in, but they're not on board with things such as, whether it be same-sex marriage or abortion. And so we as Catholics are kind of, in the wilderness, let's say, and we don't have a party to really say is ours. So what we have to do is we have to take a look at what the subject matter is, what the issues are, and make our best informed decision based on our conscience.
What about locally here? Are there any examples of this kind of thing happening here locally in Brooklyn?
There are two very good local examples, and even nationally we're seeing, people, some say, yes, there's too much of a mixing of religion, abortion is too much of a question, abortion is not enough of a question.
Right.
We take a look at a local Senate race in Queens, where we have Anthony Cuomo as well as Joe Adabo running for the same Senate seat, both of whom are Catholic. However, recently, maybe because of lowering numbers, I don't know, the Adabo campaign has preferred to put out a pro-choice piece. And so by doing that, now you're starting to alienate, Catholics in that area. So that would, tend to make people want to vote, Catholics want to vote Republican going towards Cuomo. However, you could take a look at another area like Staten Island, where McMahon is running against Grimm for Congress. And in that race, you have two people, again, both of whom are, said to be Catholic. McMahon is a Democrat, and he is, more, maybe let's say, liberal Democrat. However, he did not vote for the health care plan of the Obama administration. And he also has said that he advocates for tax credits for parents paying Catholic tuition for their schools. So here's another instance where you have to pick and choose. There's really no dividing line to say 100% one way, 100% the other way. What we're hearing from our bishops is go, towards life, but then we have to also take a look at our practical implications.
Right. Issue by issue, candidate by candidate, race by race, kind of a thing. Well, just one more quick question before we go here. The first airing of our show, of course, is at 7:30 at night, so the people who are seeing this in its first airing will be sitting on the couch, and maybe a few of them might not have gone out to vote yet. They've got a little bit of time before the polls close, and maybe someone's sitting there saying, oh, I don't know if I'm going to go out and waste the time to go out and vote. I don't know if I'm going to make that effort. What would you say to them sitting on the couch right now?
I would say in this race, it is very important to go out and vote. Let's just look at our state officials. Look at Attorney General, look at our controller's race. They're very, very close, and it means just a few voters will be able to determine who it is that gets those top seats. And maybe that means one day who will become governor, because it's an often up the ladder type of thing. We as Catholics are a large voting bloc. However, we do not vote as a bloc. Unfortunately, we do not all go together. So what I would say to all Catholics out there is go out and vote. Right. Just go out and vote. Your one vote in these instances really makes a big difference.
A lot of close races this year.
A lot of close races.
John Heyer, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time very much. Well, we'll have more on the election tomorrow. John's actually going to be back here in studio with us to kind of try and make some sense of all the election returns that's coming up on tomorrow's show. But stay with us right now, because when we come back, we'll see a parade of saints in Queens. Well, finally, today marked the Feast of All Souls, when Catholics around the world remember and pray for all those who have died. But yesterday, All Saints' Day, was a chance to celebrate some of the heroic men and women of the faith, and a church in Jackson Heights did just that, but in a very unique way. At Our Lady of Fatima, they staged a parade of saints there with local school children. Brooklyn's retired Bishop Daly was there, and so were our cameras.
When the saints go marching in, when the saints go marching in, I want to be there someday when the saints go marching in. The saints go marching in. That's you. And that's why we're here, to help you to be saints. You made an effort already to come, to be part of this exercise and this holy day dedicated to our Blessed Mother.
This we're doing for the first time this year. It's the first time in a very long time that we're in school on All Saints' Day. So being that we were going to be in school, and it is still a holy day, even though it's not a holy day of obligation, we wanted the children to take part in something special.
The Lord has to do His work. He does His work by recognizing that in that person that's presented to Him by the church and by others, but extraordinary holiness and imitation of the life of Jesus Christ is recognized for it publicly, and other people have that opportunity to pray to that person because of the holiness that's recognized, and have an emissary, and probably in a special way, to receive some kind of a cure, perhaps. Who knows? It doesn't happen all the time. Mm-hmm. We don't tell God what to do, you know.
They were assigned a specific saint, the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, because we wanted a variety of saints, but the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders had a choice of which saint they would come dressed in as. You will see the little ones, you'll see some duplicates, a lot of St. Francis's and St. Anthony, St. Patrick's, but the older ones that are involved in the main procession, you will only see one of each.
Saint Joan of Arc was born in France. When she was 17, she asked the king for an army and led the soldiers to defeat the British.
Like it very much, because I myself am a strong-willed woman, and I stand up for the women, and that's pretty much the person she was.
Oh my God, if I were a saint, it'd be a tremendous honor. I mean, living a Catholic life and being with Jesus in heaven, it'd be definitely honorable to be able to be a saint.
Feels honorable because of all people, I was Jesus. I had to walk up there and I had to bless with my hand. So the problem was, because everyone around me was chuckling, so it was hard not to laugh. But
it would be a pretty good title to become a saint, and it would feel good for me to have touched other people and influenced other people in a positive way.
Sure, they made an impression, and they won't forget that themselves. But as when they grow up to be human beings, and they can tell their own kids, hey, listen, I played the part of so-and-so in presentation that our church made on a particular day. They got dressed up and all the rest of it. And they're not going to forget that. And hopefully they'll respect that experience, you know.
Big day for all the kids there on All Saints Day. Well, that is it for tonight. Now, coming up tomorrow, highlights from a special All Souls Remembrance with Bishop DiMarzio. Meantime, we're always online over at currentsny.net on the World Wide Web. You can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Until next time, I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great night.